Tonight on Talking Points, a special election is taking place in Pennsylvania, but controversy surrounds the campaign funds of both candidates. We'll find out whether this issue will affect the results.
The European Union outlined a response to American steel tariffs issued this week. We'll have more on how these tariffs will affect American exports.
And Italy's general election took place on Sunday. We'll have a breakdown of the winners and losers in Parliament and what their actions will mean for Italy and Europe's future.
Some breaking news tonight. A South Korean official spoke at the White House just now on news regarding relations with the U.S. Good evening, I'm Mike Riccardi.
And I'm Josh Carney. Reports are saying the South Koreans delivered a letter from North Korean leader Kim Jong-un to President Trump. The letter reportedly invites Trump to a meeting on the DMZ.
On Tuesday, National Economic Council Director Gary Cohn resigned. This comes only days after President Trump announced his plans to implement tariffs on aluminum and steel imports. Following several resignations in the White House, it is believed that Cohn's is directly related to Trump's policy decision. It appears that Cohn has left the White House on good terms, however, as Trump stated he would like to have Cohn back in his administration in the future.
Earlier today, former Trump campaign chairman Paul Manafort pleaded not guilty to conspiracy, tax, and bank fraud. Manafort now will wear 2 electronic monitoring bracelets, one for the special counsel Robert Mueller's case in Washington, D.C., and a new one for his recent charges in Virginia. Originally, in both cases, Manafort was indicted with a former Trump campaign aide, Rick Gates. However, Gates pled guilty and will cooperate with Mueller.
And joining us now with the latest on the breaking news tonight in regards to South Korea is Talking Points analyst Dan Prager. Dan, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me. And did you see this coming? Diplomacy is moving so fast at this point. It's amazing.
I mean, you know, there's so much made about what was happening at the Olympics, and the real question, I think, was how much could actually come out of this. Now, some details for us tonight is President Trump has been invited to the DMZ, and North Korea is saying that they will suspend their nuclear program during any talks that may take place. Dan, how far do you think this relationship can move forward from this point?
Well, Trump said he will accept, at least that South Korean official that just spoke said he would. They're supposed to meet by May. And I think, honestly, this is a very good first step. Like you were saying, the Olympics. I mean, talk about the world coming together. Really good sign for the IOC.
But what does it ultimately mean that they are committed to denuclearization? How does that impact global policy?
You know, they can say they're committed to denuclearization, but they have to show it first. Right. And I think that's really the hard part. The South Koreans have opened the door here. Their policy talks, their diplomacy talks have opened the door for the U.S. to come in. Now Trump has to prop that door open, keep it open, and make sure that we can actually move forward on peace talks. This is going to be his major statement, probably until 2020, on what he can do for foreign policy.
But what does moving forward look like for the Trump administration? What do you think is the play here for them?
I mean, I'm not 100% sure. This is pretty unexpected. We're going to have to see where that goes. I would assume that the president will go out and will talk and say, hey, we're committed to bringing you back into the global sphere, bringing you back into the world. Just decommit to nukes and, you know, feed your people, stop the human rights violations, and we can work together.
Well, something that I find particularly interesting, right, is that, you know, it's been tumultuous for President Trump in the White House recently, with so many people resigning, Hope Hicks being the most recent announcing her future resignation. This could be a huge win for President Trump.
Absolutely.
But I think the ultimate question, right, is how much can you actually trust Kim Jong-un?
And that's a really hard one to do, especially with Trump and Kim fighting so much. You know, he called him Little Rocket Man for the longest time. And I think that's the big issue, is that really this is already a huge win for Trump. Expect his poll numbers to go up huge in the next couple of days. But it's really the South Koreans that opened the door. Credit to President Trump for really helping them with that. But it comes down to what he can do in the upcoming months if he is able to kind of keep the peace with Kim Jong-un. Both of them have a very similar mindset. They're very unpredictable. So it'll be interesting to see if they can actually kind of join together.
Well, this is just the beginning, obviously, of the breaking news tonight. Dan, thanks so much for being here, and we're going to make sure that we follow this all the way through.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
And a seat in the U.S. House of Representatives and 2018 midterm implications are on the line this Tuesday, as Pennsylvania's 18th congressional district will hold a special election to replace Republican Congressman Tim Murphy, who resigned in October amid controversy. The Republican candidate is Pennsylvania House of Representatives member Rick Saccone, and the Democratic nominee is former federal prosecutor Conor Lamb. Here to break down the issues leading up to the election and what it might mean for the midterms in November is Talking Points contributor Jack Watson. Jack, so Conor, thanks so much for being here, first of all. So Conor Lamb has actually out-fundraised Saccone, which has prompted a lot of outside groups to start sending donations to Saccone. How worried should the GOP be about the fundraising disparity here?
Mike, it is true that Lamb had the most initial funding going into this special election, but Paul Ryan, most notoriously Paul Ryan's Political Action Committee, stepped in and provided some funding for the Republican candidate Rick Saccone. Now, whether it should worry the GOP, I would say that probably, it should be a little bit alarming, especially considering that President Trump won that district, that 18th district, by almost 20 points in the presidential election over the Democratic counterpart Hillary Clinton. So, it's definitely something to look at. And
it's getting pretty close. We see that Emerson College poll that has Lamb up by 3%. Just how close is this election going to be?
I was prepared to say that this election is probably going to go to the Republicans, but that poll came out on Monday. I was shocked by it, up by 3 points. We're not just talking about decimal numbers here. That's a pretty significant number.
Definitely.
And it's not leaving a lot of room for undecided voters either. 48 to 45, I believe the poll was. But one thing that we should also keep in mind going into this election is what President Trump is doing for that region. Most notably today, what will probably rally a lot of Republicans is what he's doing with North Korea, South Korea, the denuclearization effort there. A lot of Republicans are really going to admire that, and it's also also important to keep in mind the tariff announcement earlier this week that's supposed to be protecting steel industries. Southwestern Pennsylvania, very famous for steel production, so we'll see how that plays out.
And Jack, generally speaking here, regardless of whether Lamb or Saccone wins, what sort of statements do you think this could make on the 2018 midterms?
Well, it's interesting that you mentioned the midterm elections because, as you'll recall, the entire state of Pennsylvania was just redistricted for the upcoming election. So in the region, the 18th congressional district currently, there's going to be several different, in that southwestern Pennsylvania region, there's going to be several different regions, congressional districts. So whoever wins this election is going to serve for only a couple of months until the midterm elections happen. So, depending on how well they can rally their bases, President Trump's supposed to campaign for Saccone. Joe Biden, Pennsylvania native, is supposed to campaign for Conor Lamb. We'll see how it plays out.
And Jack, I think this really has a chance to set the pace for the 2018 midterms. We'll see how it plays out. Thanks so much for joining us.
And after the break, we'll take a look at major construction project in New Jersey. Don't go away.
Your daughter just had her first breakup. Do you A, put yourself in her shoes? B, console her?
Don't worry, sweetie. This is gonna happen a lot.
Or C, find her a new boyfriend?
Nice, single boys. That was weird.
As a parent, there are no perfect answers. But you don't have to be perfect to be a perfect parent. Thousands of teens in foster care will love you just the same.
Come on, it's not that hard.
My big man fingers are having a problem with these little tiny buttons.
Whoa, watch it there. Your blood pressure's gonna go through the roof.
Tell me about it. I'm trying to learn how to get it down. Instead, it keeps going up.
High blood pressure can increase the risk for heart attack or stroke. Learn how to keep yours at a healthy range.
Ever hear a voice command? Just say text barbershop to 97779.
That's not what I said.
Just give me that. Now my blood pressure's up.
President Trump is asking congressional Republicans to deny funding to one of the nation's top infrastructure projects. The railroad tunnel plan, known as the Gateway Project, has been on the transportation agenda for nearly 7 years. Talking Points political analyst Gilat Melamed has the details on the project and the politics behind the funds. Gilat?
The Obama administration listed the Gateway Project as the #1 infrastructure priority in the country. Federal funding for that project is now in jeopardy. The main component of Gateway is the Hudson Tunnel Project, the current railroad under the Hudson River that connects suburban New Jersey commuters to their Manhattan jobs, is over a century old and was severely damaged by Superstorm Sandy. This project would fix that current tunnel and build a new tunnel to accommodate more riders. Now, this isn't just any commuter line. This section of track between Newark's Penn Station and Manhattan's Penn Station is part of the busiest commuter rail in the nation. Until recently, funding for this project seemed like a done deal. The Obama administration informally agreed that the federal government would pay for half of the Gateway Project's first phase, a $6 billion tab. New York and New Jersey would pay for the other half. When Donald Trump's transition team took over, it also listed the Gateway Project as the #1 infrastructure priority, according to a document obtained by the Washington Post. Now, President Trump is urging House Speaker Paul Ryan and other Republicans not to fund the project, a far cry from his message on infrastructure at this year's State of the Union, when he said, "I am asking both parties to come together to give us the safe, fast, reliable, and modern infrastructure our economy needs and our people deserve. Tonight, I am calling on the Congress to produce a bill that generates at least $1.5 trillion for the new infrastructure investment we need."
Now, Gilat, if President Trump is trying to make a push for bipartisan infrastructure investment, why tell Paul Ryan not to fund the Gateway Project?
Right, and it's really, I mean, this is between New York and New Jersey. Chuck Schumer was obviously integral in getting this involved. So kind of just to get back at Chuck Schumer, especially recently with a lot of the Trump administration nominations being held up, something Sarah Huckabee Sanders brings up at the press briefings every day kind of recently. So with them bringing up, holding up these nominations at the briefings this week, him urging Paul Ryan on Friday not to fund this, really just to retaliate at Chuck Schumer.
It seems that's the play, and unfortunately that's all the time that we have for this.
Right,
thank you. Earlier this evening, President Trump signed an order that levies new tariffs on steel and aluminum. The tariffs will go into effect in 15 days and for now will exclude Canada and Mexico. This follows protests both home and abroad as the EU threatens retaliation and Republicans fear negative impacts domestically. Here to break down what this all means and how it could affect the U.S. trade deficit, could be impacted going forward, are Talking Points analysts Conor, Wight, and Michael Furnari. Guys, thank you for being here.
Thank you.
A pleasure. All right, so Trump tweets that a trade war could be easy to win, and there could be a possibility of that. Is there any truth to that?
Honestly, no. The historical precedent for trade wars is that everyone involved gets hurt, and it looks like, now that this has been officially announced, we're heading towards a war. The EU announced on Wednesday, they announced a list of items that from U.S. exports that they're going to impose tariffs on. That includes things like bourbon, motorcycles, steel, jeans, T-shirts, cosmetics, and that's going to hurt certain states as well. Kentucky, that's the bourbon industry is going to be hurt there. Wisconsin, that's the home state of Harley-Davidson motorcycle, that's going to get hurt. And in retaliation, Trump has pledged to, if those tariffs do go through, Trump has actually planned to retaliate on European cars. He's going to place tariffs on those. So it's really going to get ugly for both sides.
And the GOP has reacted negatively to President Trump's announcement. Now let's take a listen real quick to what Republican Senator from Wisconsin, Senator Ron Johnson, had to say.
But a generalized tariff that would actually harm allies, harm American consumers, by the way, harm American workers that use steel in production, hurting their competitive nature in global markets as well. I'm opposed to that.
Michael, Senator Johnson obviously not a fan there. Wall Street also very critical. What exactly are Wall Street and the GOP looking for in this case?
Yeah, Mike, well, free trade has really been a Republican and a Washington consensus for decades now. And we're seeing a lot of pushback on this, and there are very few Republicans who are going to be willing to support this move. Most notably, Senator Jeff Flake, who announced that he's going to be pursuing legislation to nullify whatever President Trump puts forward. Now, the problem, of course, with that is that he's going to need 67 votes to nullify any veto that President Trump would respond with. So it seems like it's going to be a difficult road for the GOP to challenge this, but it looks like they most certainly will.
And something that Republicans are very concerned about is heading into the midterm elections at the end of this year, something that they've been, with all of the hecticness coming out of Washington this year, something that they were banking on being able to campaign on is a strong economy, and a lot of concern that these tariffs are going to derail the economy and hurt their chances to be able to pump that up as a positive.
Well, one of those major concerns when you look at it from abroad is the fact that the WTO is also concerned about this, and they're saying that there could be retaliation from the EU. But does the WTO even have any, sort of regulation that they could put on this, let alone are any of the EU laws that could be retaliatory viable?
Absolutely. Now, the WTO has, and the EU and the WTO have been going back and forth on this, and it appears that there will be complaints filed through the WTO's systems against the United States, most notably likely by Brazil, Japan, and the EU. Now, Donald Trump has previously threatened to exit the WTO, and it seems that there could be a point where mutually both sides could decide to part ways over this tariff.
And Michael, it's interesting you mentioned the WTO. Conor, they have also warned against this, but my question is, what sort of mechanism do they have to enforce anything? Is the U.S. breaking any sort of law, and what can the WTO do?
Well, it's interesting. People are talking about this is going to set an unhealthy precedent going forward for other countries to break a loophole in WTO regulations. The U.S. are claiming that these tariffs are being put in place to protect national security interests, while the EU are talking about a certain rule that would allow them to have retaliatory tariffs put in place unless they're compensated in about 90 days or so. This is a huge problem for the WTO that I think they're going to struggle to be able to handle because we haven't seen two economic heavyweights like the U.S. and the European Union go head-to-head like this.
Conor, Wight, and Michael Furnari, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you.
Coming up, the results of the Italian election on Sunday are out. We'll have a full breakdown of the winners and losers and what the policies could mean for the country. Stay tuned.
Every time I hear the alarm bell go off in school, I think it's an air raid.
A lot of houses in our neighborhood have been destroyed. I like to close my ears and sing songs whenever the bombs come close.
I'm worried our new neighbors won't like us.
But I know it's all gonna be worth it. I just want my family to be safe. But these are not my words.
These are not my words.
These are not my words.
They said I have troll teeth.
That my voice sounded like a possessed baby doll.
That no one would ever love someone as stupid as me.
That I was fat, ugly.
Disgusting.
The effect of bullying is potent.
We will no longer be the silent majority.
Now, when you see online bullying, there's something you can do about it.
We're gonna take action with the I.
I am a witness. I am a witness.
I am a witness.
I am a witness.
I am a witness, and so are you.
Adventure can be found anywhere, but the best place to start is in the forest.
I spy something beginning with S.
Snow?
No.
Snow-covered trees.
Nothing to do with snow.
Head outside to discover incredible animals and beautiful plants that come together to create an unforgettable adventure.
Wow.
So grab your loved ones.
Don't even.
And explore a world of possibilities.
Come on, this way.
Visit discovertheforest.org to find the closest forest or park to you.
Italians took to the polls this past Sunday to elect a new parliament. The results were just as chaotic as the run-up, with no party with a clear majority to govern. Anti-establishment Movimento 5 Stelle led the way with over 32% of the vote, but the center-right coalition is claiming rights to form a grand coalition government of their own after earning 37%. Joining us from Turin, Italy to break down the path forward is friend of the show, Professor Glyn Morgan. Professor, thanks so much for joining us. Now, with no party reaching the 40% threshold, President Sergio Mattarella will have to decide which party
the most likely outcome is
coalition
a coalition
to govern. What do you think the most likely outcome is at this point?
At the moment, it looks like the most likely outcome is a coalition between Movimento 5 Stelle, the new populist party, founded by Beppe Grillo, the comedian, and elements of the centre-left. It is unlikely that Movimento will ever form a coalition with the centre-right.
And so if the Movimento forms a coalition with the Partito Democratico, how much do you think their platform will have to change?
It's difficult to see what platform will emerge in any of the resulting coalitions, whether between Movimento and the left or Movimento and the right. There will certainly have to be some negotiations. At the moment, the most interesting policy position of the Movimento is the suggestion that all citizens will receive a basic income of roughly 1,700 euros. Now, this is a fabulous amount of money and is wildly impractical, particularly because Movimento also says that it wants to cut taxes.
And Movimento softened their view on Euroscepticism as recent as January. But do you think that with them in power, Italy may still have a referendum on the membership in the EU anytime coming up?
The Movimento is much less Eurosceptic than the Lega. It's much less Eurosceptic than many of the parties that we've seen emerging in Europe over the last few years. The Movimento is certainly not anywhere like Le Pen's party in France or UKIP in Britain. If you look at the opinion polls, the EU is still popular in Italy. And the suggestion that Italy would get out of the European Monetary Union and reintroduce the lira is horrifying to most Italians.
And since Lega Nord received the most votes out of the center-right coalition parties, as a whole they've decided to back Matteo Salvini for prime minister. How much of a fight do you think Salvini can put up for this bid to form a grand coalition? And if so, if a coalition fails to form, what is the likelihood of a new round of elections?
I don't believe that Matteo Salvini can put up much of a fight. I think it's very unlikely that he will be Italy's next prime minister. I can't see either the centro-sinistra, the centre-left, or the Movimento willing to go into a coalition that he wishes to be the head of. I think that one possible outcome, which is becoming increasingly likely, is that Mattarella, the president, will have to form a government where he picks the prime minister and he appoints cabinet ministers.
Professor Morgan, enjoy your time in Turin. Thanks so much for joining us. It's always a pleasure.
A recent Gallup poll found that 73% of people were worried that artificial intelligence would take away more jobs than it creates. But only 23% of people were worried that automation would affect them personally. One industry that has seen the recent entrance of AI tech is the military. The U.S. Department of Defense recently spoke on the use of AI in its drone operations. Talking Points science and technology analyst Josh Feinblatt is here to explain how AI will be incorporated into the military. Josh?
Yeah, guys, artificial intelligence has developed immensely in the past few years. It's become mainstream in modern warfare, but now they're being taken to an entirely different level. Just 2 days ago, Google confirmed it was cooperating with the Pentagon to develop artificial intelligence when it comes to military use. Their new TensorFlow AI system is currently only being used for non-offensive uses, but the Department of Defense says that the AI initiative has already been used for drone strikes in the Middle East. The drones controlled with AI are able to gather information and analyze drone footage to increase efficiency in operations. AI is definitely where the Department of Defense is moving. They've already spent $7.4 billion on artificial intelligence and data processing programs, and they've partnered with Google, which makes sense because Secretary of Defense James Mattis visited Google headquarters in August to discuss AI applications. So we're obviously anxious to see where this goes, as there can be complications with AI, but Google does maintain an AI ethics board. Personally, I think this all sounds great, but what happens when AI makes a mistake? That will be the most important roadblock for the integration of AI with military objectives. But for now, it's the brand new toy. Back to you guys.
Thanks, Josh. After the break, we'll take a look at some stories you may have missed. We'll be back in 90 seconds.
Visit AARP.org/caregiving for information on how to provide even better care for the person who once took care of you.
They told me a bottle couldn't dream. That I would never. become a superhero. But I learned how to fly, just to come back in a new disguise and be the hero that I've always wanted to be.
What are you, superheroes?
Just four brothers who hate bullies and love this city. Gear up, guys.
Some stories do not receive the mainstream coverage that they deserve. This week on Talking Points, we will take a look at a worker strike in Spain and the latest in the Colombian presidential elections. In Spain today, thousands of women have taken part in a 24-hour strike in recognition of International Women's Day. The strike was organized by the 8 March Commission and is supported by many of Spain's top female politicians, like the mayors of Madrid and Barcelona. Both the Spanish agricultural minister and the president of Madrid have expressed their support as well. Both women and men are uniting to call attention to the gender pay gap issue, as well as unequal work conditions and the devaluation of women.
Marching under the slogan, "If we stop, the world stops," protesters met in Madrid at midnight and banged on pots and pans in front of the city council buildings. 300 trains have been canceled as a result of the protests that span over 200 Spanish cities. Many other countries are also participating in Women's Day marches, including national strikes in Italy and the UK, as train and flight schedules are disrupted.
And Rodrigo Ladano withdrew from the Colombian presidential race yesterday after being diagnosed with chronic lung disease and a clogged artery. The FARC rebel group candidate, also known as Timochenko, is recovering from a recent heart surgery after suffering from a heart attack last week. Timochenko, a former guerrilla commander, has struggled and made complaints of the political process leading up to the May 2018 Colombian elections. He has faced significant criticism during recent campaigns as protesters threw eggs and tomatoes at him while shouting "murderer."
Many of the Colombian protesters are hesitant to accept the recent peace accord that was agreed upon in the summer of 2017. This followed over 5 decades of fighting, which resulted in over 250,000 deaths and the displacement of more than 7 million people. Although Timochenko has withdrawn, the FARC party plans to continue to stand in legislative polls this Sunday.
And after the break, Josh and I will take a look at some stories that we're looking ahead to. We'll be right back.
They call me Maxie, but I prefer tripod. I was your above-average four-legged homie, and then wham, bam, minivan. Some people pity me. Now that's lame. I still run, fetch, and swim. And the ladies love me. I'm the ultimate wingman. Just don't ask me to high five.
Everybody has a dream. Mine was to see the ocean. And with a little help, I made it.
Reports began circulating yesterday that Special Counsel Robert Mueller has gathered information about a secret meeting in the Seychelles prior to President Trump's inauguration. The meeting was previously described as a chance encounter, but is now described as an arrangement for a member of the Trump transition team to discuss future relations with Russia. And that's all the time we have for tonight. Thanks for watching.
Check out our webisodes on articles at CitrusTV.com/talkingpoints.
We're off next week, but make sure to tune in on March 22nd. I'm Mike Riccardi.
And I'm Josh Carney. Have a good night, Syracuse.